I mean, we got two heavyweights here with Hikaru Nakamura and Eric Hansen, both great Grandmaster players, but one of them has the Hippo and one of them doesn't. Let's take a look at what happens. Here we have Eric Hansen playing with the white pieces. He plays this move of e4, and we now have this move of b6, followed by bishop b7. So far, this is an Owens defense from black, e6. So far, everything seems normal, but now we have this move of knight e7, right? Usually with something like the Owens, we're playing bishop b4, and we're pinning that knight, and we're putting pressure on e4, but in this case, we have knight e7, and you know where we're going. We're going into a Hippo, right? Fiend shadowing both of our bishops, tucking both of our knights. Now, a4 is played. Now, this is very important. Okay, we got to play this move of a6 in this instance, because if white plays a5, we play b5. And the only reason we can play b5 is because we've played a6, right? So you see that move of a4. If there's not a pawn on c4, right, we got to play a6 so that when a5 happens, we can play b5 and we make some great space. And in that position I just showed, I mean, really this pawn is nothing but a big old target. I mean, what's it going to do? It ain't going to move nowhere. It's attacking b6. Good job. That's about all it's doing. And the second this pawn ever moves, the queen's attacking it. The second the knight ever goes here at any point, or, you know, maybe not this knight, but the other one, okay, the pawn's attacked. The second you play b4, this gives our bishop some great capabilities going forward in this game. Our dark square bishop becomes a monster. So, okay, just remember that. If you see a4, you got to play a6. In a position like this, if you see h4, you got to play h6 so that you're prepared to see h5 with g5. We have knight e2 here from Eric. And okay, we now have h6 followed by knight d7. We now have our full thick-skinned Hippo. 6 pawns on the 6th rank, 2 fianchetto bishops, 2 knights tucked away. c3 is played, and now we have castling kingside from black. Bishop e3. How does black continue here? This is actually, you know, the type of position that I've seen Naroditsky, the type of strategy that I've seen him recommend against the Hippo. That being that you really support one of your pawns with a pawn chain, right? Which is, by the way, a very solid way to play against the Hippo. And then the second thing is to kind of maneuver your knight over to this g3 square, because the second that we play something like g5, trying to tuck our knight into the game, h5 becomes weak. Right? And I don't even think knight h5 is the best move there. Probably here something like h4 is good, but that's annoying, right? I'll admit it. That's annoying, right? So that's something to think about. So what do we do here? We're not playing that. All right, I'll tell you that much. Okay, in the game we have the move of e5. I don't think this is the best move. I would probably go with something like c5 here. Okay, just kind of putting pressure from the flank, because the thing is, if you play a central pawn, there are times that this can work. I think I've only done it in one of my tournament games, maybe more. I think only one though, and I remember losing because my opponent kind of just sat there. And that's the hard thing. If you play something like c5, there's ways to continue improving your position, right? Or you could even take the center and you just lost a flank pawn and not a central pawn. But in this case, we're using one of our 2 central pawns. I mean, these pawns are holding the Hippo fortress, the Hippo brick wall together. If we take this pawn, this is only going to help white, right? Our damage is a little bit more loose now. There's some more diagonals open, a little file that's a little bit more open, all that kind of stuff, which we don't really want. Right, so I don't practically recommend e5. I think that c5 is a much better move here, and that is what Stockfish likes in this kind of position. Just putting pressure from this direction, and this helps us develop, right? I mean, queen c7 is a move that we could see here. If you take, we have knight captures back, putting pressure on the slice scored bishop, putting some more pressure on e4. If the bishop drops back, again, you got c7 now available to the queen. And if a move like b4, okay, knight back, right? This is a totally different situation because white now has a pawn on c3 that's pretty vulnerable. And both of our central pawns are still right where they were. And we can bring in reinforcements, right? Bring this rook to d8, bring this rook to c8, and, you know, eventually look at something like a d5 push here from black, and we're playing chess. We're having fun. So going back to bishop e3, I don't recommend e5 necessarily. In most cases, those central pawn pushes, they're pretty rare to pull off. But we continue. Queen d2. What does this do? It threatens to win a pawn, right? Do we want to play g5? No, we do not. So what are we going to do? King h7, right? And again, another big issue here of g5 is the fact that white can play h4. And I mean, this is just talk about pressure on this pawn. This is not what we want. So queen d2. Let's keep our position solid. King h7. Now from Hansen, we have this move of b4, and Hikaru continue with c5. I mean, putting pressure on these guys. White takes. We have b takes c5. White continues to put the rook on the b file. We have queen c7, nice little square, nice little perch for that queen. And now queen e2 from white. Now, Here Hikaru took the pawn on d4. My question for you is, which pawn should we take with? Should we take with the c pawn or with the e pawn? The answer might surprise you. The answer is to take with the e pawn. Okay, now think about it this way. If we take with the c pawn and they capture back, is our bishop more active because of this? No, right? Is it a terrible bishop? No. But is it more active? Not really, right? It's kind of closed down, okay? And there's also this open c file that a rook could kick our queen around on, right? If we play something like knight c6, white pushes our knight around, and yeah, we ain't going to b4. That ain't gonna happen, okay? So what's the other option though? Taking with the e pawn. Is our bishop more active now? It kind of is, right? It has more scope. It's not looking at a dark pawn. It's looking at a light pawn, the white pawn on d4. And the second this pawn moves, it's looking directly at the a1 rook. Knight c6 continues to put pressure on that guy. d5 is played here, you know, from white. The whole idea being that if we take this rook, white gets a tempo by taking off a minor piece. Can we play b4 now? Yeah, thanks to our pawn being on c5, we play knight b4, okay? Rook a3 is played. We now capture off that light squared bishop, and we have this move of a5 from Hikaru. h4. Did Hikaru just play h5 just to push a pawn? No. He was trying to open up that a6 square for his bishop, and he does not waste time in getting it there. Very active minor piece. I mean, you know, a huge chunk of playing good middle game chess in the Hippopotamus Defense is getting your bishops activated. This is a great example of this. I think this is one of the best things that Hikaru does in his Hippo games. Bullet, blitz, you name it. Is this bishop active? It's really not that great. How can we make it more active? 1, 2. Great piece. Great piece. Queen goes back. Let's fight for the file, right? The rook gets in the way. Let's take. Notice, by the way, this c pawn is a passed pawn. There is no pawn for the rest of this game that can ever stop it. No pawn, only pieces, which is important. We play rook b8. We're continuing to fight for that b file. Here, white captures. Okay, is that move the best? In this case, it kind of is, even though it's not super pretty. White takes, we take back with the queen, and we now have bishop d2, right? White here going for that a5 pawn, and now c4. I mean, it amazes me how accurately Hikaru can play Hippo chess, right? I mean, this is the best move in the position. How long did it take him? Took him 16 seconds, which for him is a very long think. If you watched him, I mean, he's super fast. But okay, c4 is played, right? c4, pawn to c4. And this gives up a pawn, but we now have queen b3, right? We're attacking this queen. We're attacking the pawn on a4, and this pawn's getting pretty far advanced, right? It's only a few steps away from promotion. And here's the thing. If you take the queen, which, you know, Hansen did not do, we capture back. We're only a couple steps away now. If you play knight d2, defending that square, okay, we get one square away. If you bring that knight back or something, bishop d3, we're supporting this guy to push, right? And there's not much you can do to stop it from promoting, and we're going to go at material. Sure, you can use your knight to take it, but, you know, at that point we're fine. And honestly, we don't even need to push it yet. We can play a move like knight c5. We can take on a4. We can wait for a while. There's no rush to push this because we can do it whenever we want. And white here can't just attack the pawn because guess what? Our bishop's right here. Right, so don't feel in a rush. If you have a good move, sometimes you just got to play it. But there's other instances where it's like, okay, I mean, I could play that, but by keeping my pawn there, white's setup's kind of locked up, and in that meantime, I can activate this piece, right? I can activate this guy. I can continue to activate my bishops, my knights, get my pawn structure better, all that kind of good stuff. So, anyways, all that to say, there's a lot of ways for black to win here. That's one of them. Now, of course, white did not take this. We instead see the move of queen c1. Black here just continues to push the pawn, right? Has two great defenders with the bishop and a queen. Bishop c7 is played, going for this guy, and yeah, Hikaru just doesn't care, right? When you're talking about endgame chess, how do you win the endgame? By promotion. That's what matters, right? If we're playing and you're up 4 pawns and I get a queen, I'm going to win. Okay, in most instances, obviously. In this case, we have the move of queen b2. Just attacking the queen. If the queen wants to run away, I mean, we just got c2 and this pawn. I mean, we're talking about the home stretch now. And if you take this queen, we capture back. There's only one move to stop promotion. That's knight d2, right? Okay, we play knight c5. We give up this pawn on d6, but we now have knight b3. Whole idea being, if you take, we promote. If you defend it, right, if you defend it with knight gf1 or something, we take that knight right off the board, and white has a ton of issues there. And if knight b1, bishop d3, this ain't looking good for white. It's not looking good, right? And let's say something like, you know, knight a3 is played. By the way, promotion here, it's solid, right? I would still take black in that instance, but now it's a little bit scary because white has these passed pawns. I mean, we really got to try to find a way to get more out of this guy. So one of the ways to do that is by playing knight a5, right? And then the very next move, knight c4. Try to trade off the lone defender of that square on b1, okay? All that to say, after queen b2, white here resigns the game. I thought this was a good example from Hikaru, right? I mean, just playing solid chess, not playing g5. Again, here I would probably recommend the move of c5 because it gives you this queen. And in a lot of ways, e5, you know, it is weakening to this d5 square as well. In this case, we're not worried about it because there's nothing that can get there. But if you play a move like c5, what gets weakened is this pawn on d6. But there's ways that we can guard it. So I would probably go c5. But, you know, as the game continued, right, the king tucks, we put pressure here. You know, we see black take and activate that bishop more, bring this knight into the action, bring that knight to b4, continue to improve the pieces. And yeah, Hikaru played the hippo, got a solid position against a very strong GM player, and finished it out. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you don't miss out on anything coming our way. And on top of that, I wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of November in 2023. Big love to y'all. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon member, you can click on a link down in the description below. And in that, you will see all the benefits, including one in which we recently added, which is actually a once a month session with me, in which case we go over patrons games. I'll see y'all in the next one.